Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. It is day 24, I believe, of Israel's war with Hamas terrorists in Gaza and possibly a war with Hamas terrorists beyond Israel, beyond Gaza, possibly even to where I'm sitting right now, the United States. That's what the head of the FBI said today. Breaking news right before we came on here. It's about 4:18 p.m. Eastern time in the United States, where I'm sitting right now. Some stunning comments, not surprising, but still stunning to the ear, by the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, today about Hamas and possibly Hezbollah and the Iranian regime striking here in the United States. Now, we're going to break that down in a minute, but to give you an update on what else we're going to talk about, there is an endless supply of material today that we need to share with you folks. Russia, according to a former speechwriter for Vladimir Putin, Putin now considers Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu an enemy. Also, Israel's one of its national security advisors, very close to Netanyahu in the war cabinet, Zaki Hanegbi, saying that after Israel crushes Hamas, it will deal with Hezbollah. Also, the Houthis in Yemen. We've been talking about multiple fronts opening. Now, usually we're talking about the Lebanon front to the north, but the Houthis in Yemen, about 1,000 miles south of Israel, an Iran-backed proxy, armed, fund, trained by Iran. They share the ideology. The Houthis have essentially declared war on Israel, firing now missiles and drones. Again, today, another volley after we saw a bunch fired last week. And the Houthis are saying we're going to keep this up. So is that the new front? Is there a new front to the deep south of Israel that has now officially opened up? And folks, look, you could say that the Northern Front has been open since October 7th. At least 47 Hezbollah terrorists have been killed by the Israel Defense Forces in these. They're not just skirmishes along Israel's border with Hezbollah. There's some fierce fighting there where Hezbollah is firing these anti-tank missiles, which, by the way, look, at least 7 Israeli soldiers have been killed in these engagements over the past 3.5 weeks along that northern border. But Israel has responded in particular with drone strikes that have, paid, or Hezbollah has paid, I should say, a heavy cost in southern Lebanon for its moves against Israel. 47 Hezbollah fighters killed in a limited engagement. It's more than skirmishes, no doubt, along the border, but it's not a widespread, massive, all-out war like we're seeing increasingly in Gaza. So those are heavy losses for Hezbollah. Remember, Hezbollah in that 2006 war against Israel lost hundreds of men. Now they've already lost 47, but that northern front, obviously, I believe the day of reckoning is coming there, folks. But right now, the south is heating up with the Houthis in Yemen. We also have Iran's foreign minister planning a visit to Turkey. Can you keep track of all of this? My apologies. I know right now it's kind of like a fire hose with rapidly developing stories, breaking news coming at you from every angle, coming at me as well. We had a certain way we were going to go with the live stream today. We're really going to focus on that declaration of war against Israel by the Houthis and Russia, its continued embrace of Hamas, and reports that Putin now considers Bibi an enemy. And we're still going to hit on that. But I really think today, folks, we need to start on the Hamas threat to America and this testimony by the FBI director. Now, I preface this by saying there is great, let's say, skepticism of the FBI, needless to say, here in the U.S., based on some of the hijinks at the FBI over the past several years, in particular since 2015, 2016, and the 2016 election and beyond. So the FBI has lost a great deal of respect, prestige, and credibility here in the U.S., no doubt, in particular the FBI leadership. So I preface this by saying I get it, because I know we're going to get the comments saying, the FBI, you can't believe a shred of what they say. I get it. Their trust among the American people is right now at an all-time low. And it's sad because I've known a lot of FBI agents, field agents, not the bureaucracy in D.C., but hardworking, patriotic FBI field agents over the years who love this country and want to do the right thing and are disgusted by what they've seen in the leadership over the years. But I say all that to say, when the FBI director makes these statements, I mean, you have to listen. We have to report on it. And in this case, I didn't need the director of the FBI to tell me that the terror threat, the Islamic terror threat here in the United States right now is grave in the wake of what we're seeing right now in the Middle East, no doubt. And I didn't need him to tell me that there is a Hamas network here and that there is a threat of Hamas supporters carrying out attacks in the United States. But still, we need to break down what exactly he said. So let me quote you directly from this piece in Fox News, a transcript of what Christopher Wray, the FBI director, said today. And again, I know there's no love lost for Christopher Wray and the FBI based on the hijinks over the past few years. But nonetheless, look, let's break this down together. If I can only find the article, and give me 1 second because I want to quote directly. I do not want to misquote him. Here we go, folks. Okay, let's dig into this. Not only Hamas, but Hezbollah and the Iranian regime. Christopher Wray said today that the threat of a terror attack against Americans has been raised to a whole other level, quote, due to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. He told a Senate Homeland Security Committee in D.C. this today. He went on to say that we assess that the actions of Hamas and its allies will serve as an inspiration, the likes of which we have not seen since ISIS launched its so-called caliphate several years ago. In just the past few weeks, he said, multiple foreign terrorist organizations have called for attacks against Americans and the West. Now, we've reported here on the newscast that the Iranian regime's proxies have been consistently targeting over 20 times U.S. soldiers in Iraq and Syria. So this is no surprise to our viewers, but these are more direct calls for attacks, not only against U.S. assets in the region, in the Middle East, but in the homeland, on U.S. soil. Wray went on to cite a few cases, and he said, and this is the key point here, folks, and I quote, we also cannot and do not discount the possibility that Hamas or another foreign terrorist organization may exploit the current conflict to conduct attacks here on our own soil, American soil. He followed that by saying that given the disturbing history of Hezbollah and Iran and their anti-American rhetoric, we are keeping a close eye on what impact events may have on those groups, Hezbollah and Iran, those groups' intentions here in the United States and as well, and how those intentions might evolve. Listen, if you watch a newscast on a regular basis, you know we've been warning that what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. What happens, what unfolds in the world's most chaotic, most volatile region is not only prophetic, number one. We're in Bible times, folks. But it also profoundly affects all of us, no matter where we live around the world. In terms of Hamas and Hezbollah on U.S. soil, and I want to get into Russia and Russia versus Israel, the prophetic implications there, Ezekiel 38, 39, of course, the war of Gog and Magog. And we have to talk about a declaration of war by a terrorist organization and Iranian proxy, a new front being opened against Israel. But real quick, let me unpack the Hamas-Hezbollah factor here on U.S. soil. And you might say, look, we have viewers from around the world. And yes, we do. I see Australia right now in our comments. Welcome, everyone. Hey, and by the way, if you're just joining us and you like what you hear, you think this is valuable information that you and your kids, your grandkids, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers need to know, then please subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Hey, we're kind of marching now to 1 million subscribers here on our YouTube channel. We're over 800,000 now, not because of any spectacular thing we're doing, but because God Almighty has given us a platform to tell the truth and to not mince words for such a time as this. If you want credible breaking news updates on what's going on right now from a biblical perspective, we want to be your home every day here on the Watchman YouTube channel. So be sure to give us a subscribe. We would truly appreciate it, because then the information we're sharing gets sent out around the world to a broader audience. And hopefully we can draw people not only to the truth, but ultimately draw people to the Lord. Let's dig into this. In the United States, the Hamas presence. Folks, I've reported on this for 2 decades at least, dating back to, I think, of the Holy Land Foundation, a so-called charitable organization based in Richardson, Texas, outside of Dallas, that was convicted for Hamas fundraising. That was right here in the United States. I think of a guy by the name of Nihad Awad, who was, not sure if he's still the current executive director, but at one time, he was the executive director of CARE. That's an acronym for the Council on American Islamic Relations. Back in the 90s, he said, and I quote, "I am in support of the Hamas movement." That was the leader of a major Muslim American organization saying that, or at least an organization that portrays itself as a major Muslim American organization that purports to speak for American Muslims. But many American Muslims say, we don't even know who CARE is and we don't like CARE. So take that with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, you have this alphabet soup of Islamist organizations here in the West, in the US, and in Europe, which are, look, Muslim Brotherhood affiliated organizations. They adhere to the Muslim Brotherhood's radical Islamist ideology. Now, these guys wear suits and ties. They don't, they speak eloquently, fluent English. They're real charmers in many cases. I know because I have interviewed them on camera. But folks, I can tell you, they share that Muslim Brotherhood ideology, which is an ideology of establishing Sharia law for one and all, whether you like it or not, and reestablishing that Islamic caliphate, a union of all Islamic states to form one super Islamic state ruled over by a caliph, one supreme leader. I know it all sounds pretty apocalyptic and scary, but this is the ideology. And again, I think you'd rather know than not know, and that's why you're watching this channel. But that's what the Muslim Brotherhood wants to do. Why is the Muslim Brotherhood relevant to our conversation about Hamas right now? To give you an idea who the Brotherhood is, Hamas is the self-declared, in Hamas's mission statement, I believe it dates back to 1987, the dark founding date of this demonic death cult known as Hamas, modern day Nazis only wearing different uniforms. They say, quote, "We are the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood." So Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. It's a branch of the global Muslim Brotherhood movement. And there are sympathizers and followers of that movement here in the United States. That's not alarmism. It's not McCarthyism or anything that the left would accuse some people who are sounding the alarm on this of. It's fact. And I wrote a book about the Muslim Brotherhood called The Brotherhood, written in 2013. You can find it on Amazon.com. Wrote a book that delved into this in 2011 called The Terrorist Next Door, where I broke this down at length. I don't have the whole live stream to dig into this, but if you want to find out more about this, the threat here in the West, in the US and Europe in particular, I was on the ground in the mosques interviewing Muslim Brotherhood influencers, leaders, etc. Check out the books on Amazon.com. But the presence absolutely has been here. It's been more, key point here, folks, been more of an ideological support network, a financial support network. We haven't seen organizations in the name of Hamas and Hezbollah carrying out attacks on U.S. soil. Now, overseas is different. Hamas has the blood of dozens upon dozens of American citizens on its hands, American hostages in its clutches right now in Gaza, and Hezbollah carried out the deadliest terror attack against U.S. citizens prior to 9/11. That would be the 1983 Marine barracks bombing in Beirut. We just passed the 40-year anniversary of that horrific attack. Some 243 brave U.S. servicemen murdered by Hezbollah with the full backing and sponsorship of the Iranian regime. So the intent is certainly there. Hamas and Hezbollah have mainly concentrated in their theater in the Middle East, in their backyard on Israel. But folks, both of them have a massive loathing and demonic hatred for America as well. They both repeat that mantra that is spewed by their patrons in Tehran, that America is the great Satan. This is their belief system. hey, the first rule of war, know your enemy. If you don't understand the enemy's ideology, its worldview, you cannot defeat that enemy. This is what Hamas and Hezbollah believe. Leaders of both organizations have said that their jihad is ultimately global. Yes, right now it's been limited to that theater in the Middle East, but ultimately they have global aims. Folks, Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder, the godfather of that Iranian revolution, always made clear that this revolution is not local. Iran, the founders of Iran's revolution, its Islamist revolution, always saw this as a global jihad and ultimately a global revolution. And guess what? Iran's leadership today feels the same way, and they are true believers. I know it's hard a lot of times for people to wrap their heads around this, especially here in the West. They don't really believe that. They don't really want to kill us. They don't really want to rule the world and establish a global caliphate and subject everyone to Sharia law. They don't really believe that. The Iranian regime, Hamas, Hezbollah. No, they really believe it. And folks, let me tell you, if the 20th century, the century of Mao, Stalin, Hitler, Saddam, Pol Pot, and others, taught us anything, it's that when evil men tell you they want to kill you, you should listen to them and take them at their word. So, yes, to any naive Westerners, and I'm a Westerner myself, but I ain't naive. But if you really believe this is all just bluster and rhetoric for domestic consumption, just take a look at what happened on October 7th. If these organizations, and they are organized, and the head of the snake to all this organization leads back to Tehran in the form of the Iranian regime, if these terror groups have a chance, they will carry out the most heinous, horrific acts of terror, mayhem, and murder imaginable, as we saw on October 7th. Do not discount the true intentions and the ideological fervor of these groups. They really believe what they say. And in the West, many times, I think what gets to the root of it, and then I'll move on. Let me just say this. What gets to the root of it here in the West is increasingly secular. Many in the West don't believe in anything anymore. And they can't wrap their heads around the fact that there are people who are true believers and very zealous about their cause. So they say Iran, but they couldn't really mean that. That sounds crazy. Well, guess what? It may sound crazy to you, but to them, it's their whole system, their whole ideological worldview and belief system wrapped up in the destruction of Israel and America. So yes, they really mean it. And they are taking steps actively to advance that worldview. But Hamas in America, I mentioned fundraising, the Holy Land Foundation, ideological support, people openly praising Hamas. Just look at the past few weeks, and we've reported on this extensively here in the newscast. Thousands in the streets of New York City. We have Chicago, Dallas, Houston, my hometown of Philadelphia, and other places around the United States. Massive anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas rallies right here in the U.S. So those comments by the FBI director that I laid out earlier, I mean, folks, is anyone shocked that these vicious pro-Hamas rallies, which have been dripping in genocidal rhetoric, may, God forbid, produce some foot soldiers that sympathize with Hamas who would like to do damage here in the United States? Of course not. I think it's pretty obvious. But we have the ideological support. We had the financial support. We've even had cases. In 2004, I believe, there was a case of a Hamas operative who was arrested photographing the Bay Bridge in Maryland, not far from D.C. So listen, that's Hamas. And in terms of Hezbollah, you've had no doubt a Hezbollah support network fundraising here in the United States. Again, no doubt. And over the years, there's been testimony in Congress, members of Congress expressing concerns about Hezbollah here in America. It's one thing to have the fundraising apparatus, but it's another thing to have the operational arm with people who will actually carry out attacks. And if this thing continues to go sidewards for them and go south for them in the Middle East as Israel crushes Hamas and perhaps crushes Hezbollah, more on that in a minute, do they, and the U.S. is there supporting Israel, do they lash out on U.S. soil? Do they go all the way and really sign their death warrant and do that? And the other factor here, look, folks, we have to say it. Israel's southern border was breached horrifically on October 7th. What about the southern border here in the United States? Hey, if we're talking about potential attacks, God forbid, and I pray against it, but nonetheless, I'm realistic. We have to report this. It's a possibility. If we're talking about that in the U.S., the southern border, if you're a jihadist right now, your eyes are probably lighting up. I'm sad to say. And it's been like an easy pass into the United States. Who has come over that border? The so-called gotaways who just disappear into the fabric of American society. We don't know. Does anyone watching right now, any of my fellow Americans watching, we have people around the world, but quick question, just can you tell me who's here? I don't think our government can tell me who's here. And it's a dangerous time. Let's just leave it at that. The good news is God Almighty still sits on the throne. And he neither slumbers nor sleeps when it comes to Israel. I think we're seeing that right now as Israel is going forward and making reportedly great progress in Gaza amid fierce battles. And I interviewed someone today who has a son, a 19-year-old on the front lines, a dear friend of mine. So it's fierce, it's nasty, it's bloody, but Israel is forging its way deeper into Gaza, and it needs to, as these fierce battles continue and dozens upon dozens of Hamas terrorists have been eliminated, including several top commanders who had a serious hand in the October 7th massacre in southern Israel. So these threats against the U.S. homeland come amid, again, increasingly stepped up fierce fighting in Gaza. And Israel has moved on to a new phase. The second phase, the first phase, softening Hamas up with massive airstrikes. Second phase, beginning to go in on the ground. The third phase, according to Zaki Hanegbi, Israel's national security advisor, seems to have begun, where Israel is now really, from air, sea, land, and deep, deep, deep into Gaza, ground incursions. This thing's all in now. And as Hamas has its backs against the wall and they're ready to be destroyed, do they try to go out with one last blaze of glory? They would call it a blaze of glory. One last blaze of evil, we would call it, and just try some horrible things before, as they're in their death throes, like a trapped animal, a wounded animal. We shall see. But absolutely a dangerous time, no doubt. And if you're not paying attention, you need to start paying attention. And if you don't know the Lord in these days, you need to get to know him. Because I'll tell you right now, if I did not have a personal relationship with Jesus right now, I'd be hiding under this desk and saying, oh my word, what comes next? What's going to happen? Look, I know it's not going to be pleasant, but I've built my life on the rock, and his name is the Lord Jesus. And because I've done that, I can come to you here today with boldness and confidence. I'm mighty concerned, don't get me wrong, but I'm not fearful. I don't have a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. I've got the peace that surpasses all understanding because I've built my life on the rock. This is a time, if you're putting it off, I'm not trying to scare you or alarm you, but hey, I care about everyone watching right now. We've got people of all denominations, backgrounds, Christians, non-Christians, etc., joining us right now. But as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord, and that gives me the peace, the strength I have to navigate these very tumultuous times and dangerous, uncharted waters. And man, oh man, I'd hate to move into these times right now without having a relationship with God Almighty, because he's for you and not against you at the end of the day. And that is very encouraging as we see so many discouraging things unfolding around us right now. Speaking of which, let's dig into Russia. And this very revealing interview from a speechwriter today for Vladimir Putin, a former speechwriter. And let me find that. Apologies. Here it is from the UK Express newspaper. Do I have it? Do I have it? I do. The headline: Vladimir Putin turns on Netanyahu as he sees Israel, quote, as Russia's enemy. An exclusive from the Daily Express, I should say, in the UK. The Russian president, Vladimir Putin, no longer cares for Netanyahu as Russia's stance shifts in the Middle East, a former speechwriter has claimed. He sees Israel as an enemy, according to the speechwriter, and he says, quote, Abbas Galyamov, a former speechwriter for Putin from 2008 to 2012. He now lives in Tel Aviv, tells me Putin has shifted, or tells the Express that Putin has shifted to a pro-Palestinian stance because he needs Iranian weapons. And we've been saying this on the newscast for weeks and weeks and weeks, right? That Russia has actually become dependent on Iranian armaments. And this former speechwriter for Putin says, look, he's no longer an independent player. He used to try and play middle ground between Israel and Iran, did Putin. But now he said, look, we need Iran more than we need Israel because Iran props us up in Ukraine. He even says Russia's becoming another Iranian proxy. Now, folks, a stunning turn of events here, before we move on a little bit more to the Houthis and what happens there. A stunning turn of events. Look, before Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, I would have said, look, Iran needs Russia. Iran's the junior partner in that relationship. Russia doesn't need Iran. How the tide has shifted. As Russia has needed replenishment for its arms stockpiles, it's turned to Iran. It's turned to North Korea as well. It's turned to China. But in particular, it has turned to Iran to the point where they now have a formal military and defense alliance, where Iran is just rolling off the assembly lines these attack drones, thousands and thousands of them. Russia needs Iran. I would never have said that 2 years ago. I can tell you now definitively, Russia needs Iran. So as Russia scans the geopolitical landscape, it sees Iran, it sees its longtime ally in Syria, the Assad regime. It sees Hezbollah, its ally as well in Syria, being attacked by Israel. And now Russia hosts a Hamas delegation just last week in Moscow in the wake of October 7th, the ultimate slap in the face to Israel. Russia is saying, who do we need more? Yes, I know there are 1 million Israelis of Russian descent. I know that in Israel right now. I'm there all the time. I'm around them all the time. But right now, Putin has made a conscious decision. He sees Israel as a nation of the West. Clearly, he's turned away from the West. He's done with the West. In the wake of the Ukraine war, he's done with the West. And the West is done with him. Putin has fully turned his attention to building alliances in the East. I'm talking China, Turkey, Iran, the Assad regime, etc. So this should be no surprise, and certainly not prophetically. And folks, I believe it is lining up now, and we've talked about it for years and years, but now to see the prophetic chess pieces moving, to see in the past few days alone, Russia hosting a Hamas and an Iranian delegation in Moscow, Recep Erdogan, the Turkish president, slamming Israel, praising Hamas, and to see Iran doing what Iran does, and to see them all coming together for such a time as this. Folks, look, the war of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel's war, we could call it, it's shaping up. I'm not saying it's tomorrow. I'm not saying it's a year from now, but I can tell you it's gotten a whole lot closer in the past few weeks. No one knows the day or hour of that war, or really any war that the Bible lays out. But I can tell you that war has not happened yet. It's laid out in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. And that the three nations, I believe, are the main players, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, are turning, Iran's there already, but Russia and Turkey turning viciously against Israel. And they're aligning together. And they're backing the enemies of Israel. Hey, you can tell a lot about a man by the company he keeps. And the company Vladimir Putin keeps: Hamas, Hezbollah, Assad, Iran, China, and North Korea. Swell chaps. The world's worst persecutors of Christianity, number one, and number two, viciously anti-Israel, one and all. China's getting there. The rest completely consider Israel a pariah. And these are Putin's friends. So you do the math and you make of that what you will. But this should not be a surprise to anyone in a prophetic sense where we're heading right now. Look for Israel and Russia. For that, I've been saying this for, you've been with me here, regular viewers, for 2 years I've been saying it. Look, the word I've used is unraveling. Look for that relationship to continue to unravel, number one, the relationship between Russia and Israel. And number two, when the day comes where that Ezekiel invasion is launched, it will be seen in Israel as a great betrayal by Russia. And I think Israel's already, not that they had a cozy, warm relationship. Look, they just formed formal relations in the early 90s. But Bibi and Putin had a strong relationship, pretty strong relationship on the surface. Bibi visiting there frequently, Moscow. And it wasn't a bad relationship over the years prior to the Ukraine invasion. But now the relationship's completely unraveling. And I believe after Israel crushes Hamas, quite possibly Hezbollah, and quite possibly Iran's nuclear facilities, not to mention the Assad regime and Damascus and Isaiah 17 and what could happen there, that the Ezekiel war, through the lens of the invaders, will be seen as a war of revenge against Israel. It's a war of vengeance where Iran's licking its wounds and its good buddies in Moscow are angry about it, the nerve of these Jews in Israel. And Erdogan's outraged about it, that the Zionist entity dared defend itself. It will be a war of revenge. Here's the good news. They don't get very far. I'll leave it to you to read Ezekiel 38 and 39. Just grab your Bible when we're done here. Pull it up on your app and read through. It doesn't end too well for the enemies of Israel. Ultimately, it never does. They may have a short-term victory, but if you look at the annals of all the individuals and nations and entities and organizations that have come against Israel, where are they now? Where are where's Haman, prime minister of the mighty Persian Empire? Where are the Philistines, the ancient Philistines? Where are the Nazis, the Romans, the Ottomans? Where are they? But against all odds, where's Pharaoh? But against all odds, Israel not only survives, it thrives. How? How on earth could this happen? One reason, and one reason only: God Almighty. Against all odds. The continued existence of Israel is a miracle. Okay, you have to be in deep denial to not see that and steeped in darkness. One last thing, the Houthis. I want to get to Zaki Hanegbi's comments. He's in the war cabinet in Israel. He says that Hezbollah will be dealt with. Let's unpack that tomorrow. But I want to wrap here. We're talking multiple fronts, and that ring of fire that Israel is surrounded by. We've used that term many times here in the newscast, the ring of fire, whether it's Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen to the south, those various Iran-backed Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. So we've been looking for these other fronts to open, and we've seen activity in each of them over the past 3.5 weeks, but now Yemen is playing with fire. Here's from the UK Express. Yemen's Houthis declare war on Israel. Bad move, boys. Declare war on Israel and vow to ramp up attacks as the conflict spirals. Yemen's Houthi rebels, it says, have effectively declared war on Israel after launching missiles and drones at the south of Israel earlier today. The Houthis are part of Iran's axis of resistance and have rallied behind Hamas since the October 7th attacks. They have been at war with Yemen's internationally recognized government since 2014, and they control Yemen's capital city of Sana'a. Again, Yemen's about 1,000 miles south of Israel. They launched a large number of missiles and drones towards Israel today. And they said they will continue to attack Israel to help the Palestinians to victory. This was a televised statement delivered by the head of the Houthis in Yemen. Israel's going to strike back. Folks, I'm going to tell you right now, the U.S. last week intercepted these Houthi missiles being fired towards Israel. Israel intercepted them today. Israel's not going to stand pat. The last thing Israel wants to do is fight a war on about 4 different fronts. whether it's Gaza, whether it's Lebanon, where Gaza is a full-scale, all-out war now, whether it's Lebanon, where it's fighting Hezbollah, whether it is Syria, where engagements continue there, obviously, Israel carrying out strikes there, and Iran continuing to try to transit weapons through there. So Israel does not want to fight on a fourth front in Yemen, but I don't think Israel can stand for this. I think Israel is going to respond in some fashion against the Houthis. I don't know when, I don't know how. I'll be shocked if they don't send some sort of message to the Houthis in Yemen. Stay tuned there. I don't know how Israel's going to do it. The world will howl and say, warmongers, you're opening another front, when in fact Israel is just defending itself. But watch what's happening in Yemen. Maybe Israel says, they're not even worth dealing with. We can just shoot their projectiles out of the sky, and the U.S. is in the Red Sea, and the U.S. can shoot them out of the sky. We don't need to really be concerned about the Houthis. But the way Israel operates seems to be, look, we're going to send a message. So the Houthis, I would be surprised if Israel eventually, I'm not saying overnight, but eventually doesn't have a little bit of payback for the Houthis to send a message that if you dare ever do this again, or even think about it, we will crush you. So we shall see how that unfolds. Wow, folks, so much to talk about. We were just scratching the surface today. In 35 minutes, we just scratched the surface. That's why I want you to come back here tomorrow. We're going a little earlier tomorrow, I believe, on the live stream. I'll have more details for you there. We'll post it here on YouTube, on the community tab, and in social media, exactly what time we're rolling tomorrow. Hey, quick reminder before I go. Everyone's asking, how can I help? Eric, what can I do to help Israel? Mer Panim is an incredible organization that I work with closely. I've been recommending Mer Panim over the past 3.5 weeks to everybody. Hey, you want to help? You want to help the people of Israel, the beleaguered communities in southern Israel, in northern Israel right now, with some 300,000 Israelis displaced from their homes? Then donate to Mer Panim. Mer Panim, mpgive.org. That's mpgive, Give.org. Mer Panim is on the ground in Israel right now, feeding and clothing and providing supplies, toiletries, everything to these victims, number one, of the attacks of October 7th, the massacre, and their family members. But number two, all the displaced families who've had to flee their homes. Refugees, in a sense, inside their own country. They've had to evacuate northern and southern Israel. Mer Panim is on the ground there doing God's work and helping these people. I've worked with Mer Panim on the ground. They're helping Holocaust survivors. This is an amazing organization. mpgive.org. Check them out and fulfill that biblical mandate too, to bless the people of Israel now more than ever. This is when Israel needs a few good friends, or many, more than a few good friends. This is where, as supporters of Israel, friends of the Jewish people, we really earn our keep, in my view. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the newscast. Much more to discuss tomorrow, to be determined. The time we're coming to you tomorrow. Stay tuned. Until then, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.